Hi, this is Roger, thanks for dropping by. Dendrobium Prima Donna, now in pieces. I had to think off camera. Basically what I'm going to do is these two pieces, none of the canes on here have bloomed from all of the nodes that they're capable of blooming on, so I'm not taking any of these canes off. But what I am going to do is tie them together in a cluster so that they will stand up, and prior to potting them I'm actually going to run these roots under the tap, because what's happened with these is obviously they were left dry. I thought that's pushing my luck a bit, so I actually stood them in the Vander bucket just to keep them hydrated. But with the weather we've been having, with the warmth and the fact that they've been in the house overnight, they have actually dried out again now. So I'm not happy with these roots. They do feel quite soft. I'm just hoping that some of them are capable of pushing out. I do have some new roots and I do have signs of new growths. So I have there's a nice new bulge there. So there's new canes to come. And there are some active roots, and the new canes will produce even more new roots. So that's, I'm going to call it a bundle. So that's bundle number one. So that's going to go in a pot, as is, just literally plonk and try and get the thing to stand upright. By tying the canes together in an upright position, it should be stable, but we'll have to wait and see. It might need one or more stakes. And then the other two pieces that are left, I've had a look at these, and these quite honestly are in the same position. If you have a look at this little piece, where's my camera? It's bloomed to there. It hasn't bloomed down here yet, and this is one of last year's canes that's bloomed to there. It hasn't bloomed here, so it's highly likely to bloom on the rest of those canes. And this one, this has got one of the larger last year canes, has still got places to bloom. But to take the two older canes off leaves it on its own, so it's got no support. So I'm going to keep these together again. We've got new roots in places, and that will be followed by new canes, even though on these two pieces I don't see new canes starting yet. But nonetheless, if I strap these two pieces together with the bases at the same height obviously, and get this in a pot, don't all shout at once, but that's Dendrobium Prima Donna to go down the line. I don't let things go until I'm happy they're growing. And actually there is a new cane just starting there, I think. So what was one will now be two potfuls, and one to go down the line. As Dendrobium nobiles go, it's vigorous. Quite honestly, it's easy to grow, it's easy to look after, and it blooms its head off at the appropriate time. So I'm going to give these roots a flipping good soak. They've all been cleaned off and everything in advance. They just need a good soak. Sort myself out some media and some pots, and then we'll get those in a pot. Pots, plural, 2. I'll be back. Just an aside, for all you who go rushing out to buy the Orchiata bark, I now have new Orchiata bark, so you know, the largest sizes, and this is the medium bark, and that's not what I call good bark. It's flaky. It's just, and there's more of it. The last lot I had, you get an odd piece like that, but in this new lot I'm finding quite a bit, and if they're just falling apart like that, they're not going to last. Bark needs to be rock hard for it to be capable of lasting. There's also quite a bit of wood in there. Well, that's not so bad, at least that's hard. But these thin flaky bits are just, look, they just fall apart. How long's that going to last when it gets wet? It's not as good as it used to be. You have to bear in mind that it's probably at the expensive end, so I may have to start looking for an alternative. I need to have a chat with Sarah at Burnham's about what they use and where they get it from, and are they using it just because it's cheap and they've got a really good deal, or are they using it because it's flipping good stuff? Because Sarah will be honest if I ask. But yeah, I'm not so pleased. The big stuff is pretty good, and the small stuff, you'd have a job to find if it had flaky bits or not, because it's small stuff, but this medium stuff is showing it up. And it's these thin little flaky bits. It's almost as though it's like a layer within the trees they've used that just is soft. Anyway, it's what I've got, and it's what I've got to use. Now, this could be fun. First of all, an explanation. That's medium-sized bark, and you wouldn't normally expect me to put sphagnum moss in with medium bark. But these root systems on this Prima Donna that I'm left with are not that good. Now, although there are some new ones, what's there is effectively going to die if it stays dry for any length of time. The roots have started to go. They haven't completely gone, but they're on their way. And if they stay dry for longer periods, which is what happens after a repot, because the new Orchiata is, well, under normal circumstances, rock hard and dries incredibly fast. So it's going to get periods of dryness between waterings. And the only way I can stop that happening is to mix some moss in with it. Now this will have a knock-on effect, because when I come to the winter time and I want to keep it on the drier side, in fact let it dry out completely, it's going to take longer to do it with moss in the mix. Well, that's up to me to accommodate and compensate, and I'm happy to do that on the grounds, at least I'm hopefully going to be doing it with a live set of roots and not ones that are brown bred. As I said, I would not normally do this in a pot with a type of dendrobium that needs to dry off frequently and for reasonable periods in the winter. I won't say a total dry winter rest, because I don't do that with my Nobiles. Most of my proper dry winter rest orchids, dendrobiums, are mounted. So yes, they're in some moss, but I'm in complete control of that. And because they're mounted, if they do get a trickle of water to stop them hydrating, even in the winter it's still dry in a day, whereas this will take longer because it will be in the confines of a pot. It'll be up to me to modify the amount of water it gets and how often. Bear in mind, I don't keep them dry for ridiculously long periods like some people do. I'm hoping this is going to work. It's more important at the moment for these pieces to survive, to develop a new active root system to replace the one that's semi-lost. I won't say totally lost. Now, I do not like these crystal clear pots, but the only ones I've got that are opaque are too big. I do not want these to be in large pots. I want these root systems confined. They're both air cone pots, so they will get some air in round the bottom, which again will help compensate for the fact that I've put some moss in here. But whether I can get these to actually stand up or not will remain to be seen. So let's start with the bigger pieces, because these are going to be the hardest. The roots are actually wet at the moment. And what I need to do is look at where the canes are. Oldest canes in the middle, and any signs of life pointing outwards. Well, there's a new growth starting there, that's pointing outwards, and there's probably a new one there pointing outwards, and there's highly likely to be new growths from here, here and here. Can't guarantee it. So I reckon that's not a bad basis. Now I'm going to have to force this in the pot, but quite honestly it'll do it the world of good. If you confine dendrobium roots in a small space, they will grow better. Now, I do not understand why, don't really need to. But these are taking some getting in. As I said, I'm almost having to force these in. And there's not going to be a lot of room for media. But I can see straight away I'm going to have a hell of an air gap down there. So before I even get these roots down in the pot, I need that full. Don't mind a small amount of air in round these, but because of the state that the roots are in, there's no point in having a lot of air. They need to stay hydrated. The only way that's going to happen is to have media in contact with them throughout the pot, which is unusual. I do hope this is going to stand up. I meant to strap these together before I started, so I may have to break off and have a go at that. It's only just enough room to get down the side of these roots. They really are tight. 2 reasons: they like it, and secondly, with any luck, it will hold the flipping thing upright. Hopefully. I can't guarantee it until I let go of the plant, which I'm certainly not doing yet, because I'm nowhere near tight. But I do want these roots in tight. I don't normally exert this amount of pressure, I must admit. If you have a look here, there's no media there. I'm going to have a hell of a job getting any down there, but I'm going to have to do some work to do it. I've got to try. So a little at a time. If you try and force a huge big chunk down there, you're highly liable to snap off roots. So it's just got to be done a bit at a time. And look, I'm lucky I've got a clear pot. I can see what I'm doing. So I can see little bits getting down into places. Without that horrible snappy sound that you get when you break your new roots off. I suspect that one's going to break. There's only so much you can do. I can see a root tip down in the pot that's not attached to a root already. Gonna lose some, but if I don't get this in tight, it's not going to work. It just isn't. I need the media right in round all the roots. It's a lot of pressure. So I'm just grabbing hold of the plant to make sure that before I do the final pressing down, the plant's upright in the pot. And then round the base of the plant, I'm just trying to find some bits of bark with no moss, so that the base of the plant is still capable of drying quickly without having soggy moss around it. How am I doing? There's my detached root tip. Hopefully only the one. I don't think that's bad. Now what I'm going to do now is stand that in the corner of the sink so that I forgot to strap it before I put it in the pot. I need a tie round there where my hand is. I need that to stay as it is. That's how you can tell you've potted it tight. You pick the whole thing up and it doesn't fall off. It's tight, and it needs to be. But if I let go and they all spread out, they may lift themselves out. So I'm just going to stand it in the corner of the sink and then go and get a tie in a minute. That's got you. Right, we just will do the other one, but this time I will strap it first, as I've remembered. I'll be back. Right, the same thing with these 2 pieces. Try and get the older canes in towards the middle and any signs of new growths pointing outwards. But these pieces, although this piece has got a lot more roots on it, it hasn't showed where it's actually going to shoot out yet. Although it's swelling there, there's no new growths on this that are visible. There will be, but not yet. So making sure the base of both plants is at the same height, so that when it's in the pot you haven't got one buried and one sticking out the top. I'm just going to hold that together, chuck some raffia around it, and one-handed, that'll be fun. There could be some language. But I'm strapping these quite tight, but it's only raffia, you know. It's not going to do any harm. And this stuff that I've got is very flimsy raffia. It actually breaks and tears quite easily. If it gets wet, you can't even tie a knot in it. So it is a... there we go. That's all I'm after, is to just hold them together while I get them in the pot. And I'll do the other one in a minute. Right, pot. How deep are those roots? I'm having trouble getting this one in as well. Just tuck some of these old roots snap, I don't care, but there's quite a few new roots around this bit, so I'm going to do that bit first while I can see it before I bury it. And just try and wiggle this in round those underneath into those gaps before I get too much in there and then can't do it. And really try not to break those new root tips. There aren't many, but there are some. And that's enough down that side. No gaps, yeah? So now I can turn the plant round, ease that back into that area that I've already pre-filled, and start the same process round here, which will be more difficult because I haven't got so much space now. But nonetheless, with a clear pot, at least I can see what I'm doing. There are some new roots around here, so again, go steady where your finger poking goes. Try not to poke where there's root tips, best you can. So if you were doing this in a non-clear type pot, like in a black pot or a clay pot, you wouldn't be able to see what the hell you're doing. There are good reasons for having clear pots. Again, nice and tight. It's got to hold this thing upright. And make sure the base of the plant is not buried, especially if there's any moss in that area. You don't want the base of the plant getting soggy. Strictly speaking, in most cases, apart from things like, you might get away with it with things like Masdevallias, you know, they tend to be, where they grow, they're buried in moss and, you know, the leaves just poke out the top. But your normal sort of epiphytes growing on trees and stuff, their base is often clear of where their roots are. There's a gap there so that some air can get around the base. And if you keep that area soggy and a new growth comes out a little bit low and is into that soggy media, the chances are it might rot off. So to avoid that, don't bury the base. Well, that's in there. Yay! And it stands up on its own. Yay! For now. I haven't watered it yet. That always, although it compacts certain parts of it, it does allow the plant to move. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with that. They're both upright. They're both in nice and tight. Both sets of pieces have got potential for new growth and some active new roots. Those now need one hell of a soak. So that's those two done. I'm pretty confident they will now grow on despite having considerable root loss, but time will tell. So that's that out of the way. I needed that one done. That was playing on my mind. See you next time.